Before we start the video, please let us know which country you're listening to in the comments. We're really curious. Don't forget to like and subscribe. The pain in my ribs made it hard to breathe. As he sat down at the Christmas dinner table, my daughter Emily shot me a warning glance, then smiled at the assembled guests. Brandon, my son-in-law, raised his wine glass and announced loudly, a toast to Marcus, still tough as nails, even after that nasty fall down the cottage stairs. His grin was all teeth, no warmth. Guess the old man learned his lesson about wandering around in the dark, eh? He smiled back, keeping my expression neutral, despite the sharp pain that radiated through my chest with each breath. Let him think I was just a clumsy old fool. Let him believe his plan had worked, because what Brandon didn't know was that he hadn't fallen down those stairs at all, and I had proof. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let him start at the beginning 3 weeks earlier, when this whole nightmare began. My name is Marcus Thornton. I'm 64 years old, and I spent 36 years with the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the last 15 as a detective in the Major Crimes Unit. I've seen my share of darkness, the kind that makes you question human nature, murder, fraud, domestic violence. I'd investigated them all. He thought retirement would mean peace, quiet mornings with my late wife, Margaret's garden, maybe some fishing at the lake. Margaret passed 2 years ago. Cancer. She fought hard, but in the end, it took her. After that, my daughter Emily became everything to me. She was our only child, a nurse at the Street Boniface's Hospital in Winnipeg. Smart, caring, with her mother's keen eyes. When she married Brandon 5 years ago, I'd had my reservations. The guy was a real estate developer, always talking about his next big deal, always spending money he didn't quite have yet. But Emily loved him, and I kept my concerns to myself. That's what fathers do, right? It was early December when Emily called. He was in my workshop behind the house, building a bookshelf for my spare room. My phone buzzed, and her face appeared on the screen, bright and smiling. "Dad, how are you?" "Good, sweetheart. Just working on a project." "What's up?" "Well, Brandon and I were talking, and we realized you haven't been up to the cottage since Mom passed. We thought maybe it would be nice to go there for a weekend, just the three of us, get away from the city, spend some quality time together. What do you think?" The cottage Margaret and T. all built it 20 years ago on Lake Winnipeg, about an hour and a half north of the city. It was our sanctuary, our escape. He hadn't been back since she died. Too many memories. I don't know, man. It's winter. The roads can be rough, and the cottage isn't exactly set up for cold weather stays. Brandon's already thought of that. They had the heat turned on remotely, and he's been checking on the place. Everything's ready. Plus, it would be good for you, Dad. You've been cooped up in that house for too long. Please. There was something in her voice. Not quite desperation, but close. I wondered if she and Brandon were having problems. Maybe she wanted neutral ground to talk things through. All right, I agreed. When were you thinking? This coming weekend, we could drive up Friday afternoon, stay through Sunday. I'll make Mom's famous beef stew. That sealed it. Margaret's beef stew had been my favorite. Okay, sweetheart. Count me in. Perfect. Brandon will pick you up Friday at 2. Love you, Dad. Love you too, Emmy. He hung up. But something nagged at me. Maybe it was 36 years of cop instinct, or maybe it was just grief making me paranoid. But Brandon, offering to turn on the heat and check on the cottage, seemed oddly generous. He'd never shown much interest in the place before, always complaining it was too far from the city, too rustic, too boring. He pushed the thought aside. Maybe I was trying to be a better son-in-law. Maybe I was making an effort for Emily's sake. Friday arrived cold and grey. Typical Manitoba December weather. He packed a small bag with warm clothes, my medication for the high blood pressure I'd developed since Margaret's death, and a book I'd been meaning to read. At 2 o'clock sharp, Brandon's black Ford F-150 pulled into my driveway. I was alone. "Where's Emily?" he asked as he climbed into the passenger seat. "Change of plans," Brandon said, pulling back onto the street. "She got called in for an emergency shift at the hospital. Some kind of pile-up on the perimeter highway. She'll drive up tomorrow morning when her shift ends. Should we wait for her then?" "Nah," she insisted we go ahead. Said she didn't want to ruin the weekend. You know how she is, always putting work first. There was an edge to his voice when he said that. We drove in silence for a while. Brandon seemed tense, checking his mirrors frequently, his jaw clenched. He tried to make conversation. "How's the real estate business?" "Busy. Always busy. Got a few developments in the works." "That's good." More silence then. "Actually, Marcus, he wanted to talk to you about something." "Here it comes." "I thought he needs money. I'm expanding the business. Looking at some commercial properties. Big investment, but the returns could be substantial. He was wondering if you might be interested in partnering up. You know, use some of your retirement funds. It's a sure thing." There it was, as I kept my voice neutral. "How much are we talking about?" "Well, to get a decent stake, probably around 200,000. But like I said, the returns would be excellent. 30–40% annually. I'd heard that pitch before from fraud artists and Ponzi scheme operators. No legitimate investment guarantees those kinds of returns." "Let me think about it," he said. Brandon's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "Sure, take your time, but I need to know soon. The opportunity won't last forever." We pulled off the highway onto the gravel road that led to the cottage. The trees closed in around us, heavy with snow. The sun was already setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and gray. Brandon drove fast, too fast for the conditions, and the truck fish-tailed on the icy patches. "Easy," I said. "No need to rush." He didn't slow down. We arrived at the cottage as darkness fell completely. It looked smaller than I remembered, more isolated. The nearest neighbor was 3 kilometers away. No cell service out here either. We'd installed a landline years ago for emergencies, but I hadn't checked if it still worked. Brandon grabbed his bag from the back seat and mine. "I'll get this inside. You go ahead and start the fire." The cottage was cold. Despite Brandon's claims about having the heat turned on, my breath came out in clouds. I found the thermostat and cranked it up, then moved to the fireplace. The wood bin was empty. "Brandon, we need to get firewood from the shed." "He'll do it in a minute." Just let me unpack. He disappeared into one of the bedrooms, closing the door behind him. He heard him talking, probably on his phone while he still had a signal from the road. The tone was urgent. "Just." He put on my coat and went outside to get the firewood myself. The shed was around the back of the cottage, accessible by a set of wooden stairs that led down from the deck. The stairs were old, weathered by years of harsh Manitoba winters. Margaret had always said we needed to replace them. He grabbed the wood, loaded my arms full, and started back up. That's when I noticed it. The second step from the top had been sawed partway through, the cut hidden by a thin layer of snow. If someone put their weight on it, it would snap, sending them tumbling down onto the frozen ground 2 meters below. My blood went cold, and it had nothing to do with the temperature. He examined the cat more closely, brushing away the snow. Fresh sawdust. He stuck to my gloves. This had been done recently. Within the last few hours, he carefully stepped over the damaged stair and went back inside. Brandon was in the kitchen pulling groceries from a cooler. Found the problem with the stairs, he said, watching his face carefully. Second step is rotted through. Almost fell right through it. We'll need to be careful. His expression didn't change. Oh yeah, that's dangerous. Good thing you noticed. I'll take a look at it tomorrow in the daylight. See if we can fix it. It was good. I'd interrogated hundreds of suspects over my career, and Brandon's poker face was better than most. But there was a tell, a tiny twitch at the corner of his left eye. It was lying. Yeah, he said slowly. Good thing. That night, he barely slept. He lay in the bedroom I'd shared with Margaret, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. The saw stare, Brandon's lies about the heat being under pressure to invest money. Emily conveniently called away. A pattern was forming, and he didn't like where it pointed. The next morning, I woke to find Brandon already up, coffee made. He seemed cheerful, almost manic. Morning, Marcus. Sleep well? Well enough. When's Emily supposed to arrive? She texted me. Her shift ran long. She won't make it until late afternoon. Thought maybe you and I could do some fishing. The ice should be thick enough on the lake. And not ice fishing on Lake Winnipeg in December with a man I was starting to suspect wanted me dead. Maybe later, I said. My hips been bothering me. Think, I'll just relax here. Read my book. Brandon's smile tightened. Come on, Marcus. Don't be boring. Margaret wouldn't want you sitting around like an old man. Think, the mention of my wife's name in that context made my jaw clench, but I kept my voice level. I said, maybe later. After breakfast, Brandon announced he was going into town for supplies. We're low on a few things. Should only take an hour or so. You'll be okay here alone. I've been taking care of myself for 64 years, Brandon. I think I'll manage. The moment his truck disappeared down the road, I went to work. First, he checked the landline. Dead. The cord had been cut, hidden behind the desk. Another accident. Next, I went through Brandon's bag in the bedroom, buried under his clothes. I found a folder. Inside were documents, mortgage papers on a commercial property in Winnipeg dated 3 months ago. Amount $1.2 million. Behind that, casino cash advance receipts, dozens of them totaling nearly $300,000. Letters from collection agencies, a notice of foreclosure. Brandon wasn't just in financial trouble, he was drowning. At the bottom of the folder, I found something that made my stomach drop. Life insurance documents. Mine. A policy Margaret and Dean had taken out 20 years ago worth $500,000. The beneficiary had been Margaret, but after her death, he changed it to Emily. Or so I thought. According to these documents, the beneficiary had been changed 6 months ago to Brandon. My hands shook as he put everything back, exactly as I'd found it. I needed more evidence, something concrete, and I needed to be smart about it. Brandon was desperate, and desperate men were dangerous. I went outside and examined the stairs again in the daylight. Using my phone, I took photos of the cat, the sawdust, everything. Then I checked the perimeter of the property. The woodshed door had fresh pre-marks. Brandon had broken in to get the saw. He wasn't planning an accident. He was planning murder. When Brandon returned, I was sitting by the fire, book and lap, appearing for all the world like I didn't have a care in for all the world like I didn't have a care in the world. Hey, Marcus, got everything we needed. How about that fishing now? Actually, I was thinking about your investment opportunity. Tell me more about it. His face lit up. For the next hour, he pitched his development project, showing me glossy brochures on his phone, talking about projected returns and market conditions. It was all nonsense. Of course, I'd seen the foreclosure notices. There was no development project. He just needed money to pay his gambling debts. So, what do you think? He finally asked. Finally, I need to see the actual property. Meet with your partners. Review the financials. You understand, Brandon? I'm a careful man. His expression ardent. There isn't time for all that. He told you this opportunity won't last. Then I guess it's not meant to be. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Brandon stood up slowly, his hands curling into fists at his sides. You never liked me, did you, Marcus? Never thought I was good enough for Emily. This isn't about shut up, old man. I'm talking now. A stepped closer, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You know what your problem is? You think you're so smart, so superior with your copy stories and your perfect little life, but you're just a washed-up has-been who couldn't even save his wife from cancer. The blow struck deep, as it was meant to, but I kept my face impassive. I think you should leave, Brandon. Leave. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's my track. Emily won't be here for hours. He smiled, and it was the coldest thing I'd ever seen. Besides, we haven't finished our conversation about the investment. Say, you really need that money, and they, one way or another, I'm going to get it. He moved toward me, and I stood positioning myself between him and the fireplace. 36 years of training kicked in. I might have been 64, but I kept myself in shape, and I knew how to handle myself. This is your last chance, Brandon. Leave now and we can talk about this calmly tomorrow when Emily's here. Emily's not coming, he said. He told her not to, told her we needed bonding time, me and her old man. She thinks we're having a nice father-son weekend. So what's your plan? Kill me? Make it look like an accident? He actually laughed. Killed you? Jesus? Marcus? You really have been watching too many cop shows. I'm not going to kill you. You're going to have an unfortunate accident. The stairs, you already noticed. Or maybe a fall on the ice. Hell, maybe your heart just gives out from the stress of being so far from your medication. My medication's in my bag. Is it? He pulled a pee bottle from his pocket. My blood pressure medication. Oops, must have fallen out. These old cottages are dangerous, Marcus. Lots of things can go wrong. That's when he rushed me. Easy stepped, using his momentum against him, and he crashed into the coffee table. But he was younger, stronger, and fooled by desperation. He recovered quickly and came at me again. This time, his fist connected with my ribs, and I heard something crack. The pain was blinding. I went down and he was on me, his hands around my throat. Black spots danced in my vision. This was it. This was how it ended. Murdered by my own son-in-law in the cottage I built with my wife. But then, through the fog of oxygen deprivation, I remembered something. Margaret's gone. She'd kept a .38 revolver in the cottage, insisted on it for protection. It was in the drawer of the bedroom nightstand. He bucked my hips, throwing Brandon off balance, and brought my knee up hard into his groin. He howled and released his grip. He rolled away, gasping, and stumbled toward the bedroom. It was right behind me. He yanked open the nightstand drawer. The gun was there, loaded, exactly where Margaret had left it. He spun around just as Brandon reached me, and he froze, staring down the barrel. Back off, he wheezed, my throat raw. Now, he raised his hands, but his eyes were calculating. You won't shoot me, Marcus. You're a by-the-book cop. Besides, how would you explain it to Emily? Self-defense. And you'd be surprised what I'll do to survive. He gestured toward the main room. He moved slowly, he completed, walking backwards. He followed, keeping the gun trained on him. My ribs screamed with each breath, but adrenaline kept me upright. Sit in that chair. Hands on the armrests where I can see them. While I kept the gun on him, I used electrical tape from the junk drawer to secure his wrists to the chair arms and his ankles to the chair legs. Not perfect, but it would hold him for a while. You can't keep me here, I said. Emily will come looking. No landline, remember? And no cell service. Emily won't worry until tomorrow at the earliest. By then, their CMP will be here. His face went pale. What did you do before you got back from town? He walked to the road, got just enough signal to send some texts to Emily, to my old partner at the detachment, told them both that I was concerned about some things I'd found, that I needed help. My partner's probably already on his way. It was a bluff. I hadn't made it to the road. But Brandon didn't know that. You can't prove anything, he said, but his voice lacked conviction. He pulled out my phone and showed him the photos of the solitaire. Actually, I can. Plus, the documents in your bag about my life insurance policy, the forged signature, changing the beneficiary. That's fraud, Brandon. And combined with the assault I just endured, the attempted murder charges are going to stick. His face crumpled. I didn't mean for it to go this far. The debts just kept growing. And I thought, if I could just get access to some capital, I could turn it all around. He loved Emily, Marcus. He do. But he got in too deep. So you decided to kill me. He needed that insurance money. After you were gone, he was going to take care of Emily. I swear, the life insurance, plus your house, your savings, it would have been enough to cover everything and still have left over for Emily. You would have bankrupted my daughter trying to save yourself. He said nothing because we both knew it was true. He sat down heavily in a chair across from him, the gun still in my hand, but resting on my hand, but resting on my lap. My ribs throbbed. You know what the sad thing is, Brandon? If you'd just been honest, if you'd come to me and told me you were in trouble, he might have helped, not with the gambling debts, but with getting you into treatment, helping you find a way out. That's what family does. We're not family. Espad. You made sure I knew that every single day. Maybe there was some truth to that. Maybe I hadn't been as welcoming as I should have been, but it didn't excuse attempted murder. We sat in silence as the sun set and the temperature dropped. He didn't dare leave to get firewood, not with Brandon secured, but potentially able to work himself free. So we waited in the growing cold. Around 900 p.m., headlights flashed through the windows. A vehicle pulled up outside. My heart raced. Had my bluff worked? Was it the RCMP? The door opened and Emily walked in. She took in the scene immediately. May bruised and bleeding, holding a gun. Brandon taped to a chair. Her face went white. Dad, what happened? What did you do? Not what I did, sweetheart. What he did. I quickly explained everything. The solitaire, the forged insurance documents, the attack. With each revelation, I watched my daughter's face transform from confusion to horror to grief. When I finished, she turned to Brandon. Is it true? I couldn't meet her eyes. I can explain. Is it true? He was desperate. He made mistakes, but he did it for us, for our future. You tried to kill my father. Her voice broke. How is that for us? She pulled out her phone. I'm calling the police. No signal here, he reminded her. Landlines cut too. We need to drive to where there's service. Emily looked at Brandon one more time, and I saw her heart break in real time. Then she hardened, becoming someone I didn't recognize. Let's go, Dad. We'll take my car. I can stay here and think about what is done. Emmy, we can't just leave him. Watch me. We left Brandon, taped to the chair, drove 20 minutes until we had cell service and called the RCMP. Constable James Raymer, my old partner, met us at the detachment. He gave my statement, showed him the evidence on my phone, told him where to find the insurance documents in Brandon's bag. They arrested Brandon at the cottage 3 hours later. The charges: attempted murder, fraud, forgery, assault, causing bodily harm. The evidence was overwhelming, which brings me back to the Christmas dinner table. 3 weeks after that nightmare weekend, the broken ribs Brandon gave me were still healing, making it hard to breathe, hard to sit upright for long periods. But I'd insisted on hosting the family dinner anyway. Emily deserved some normality after everything she'd been through. Brandon, of course, was out on bail pending trial. His lawyer had convinced the judge he wasn't a flight risk. Not with Emily still legally his wife. She'd filed for divorce the day after his arrest, but these things take time in Canada. And somehow Emily had allowed him to come to Christmas dinner. For closure, she'd said, "I need to see him one more time, face him with the family around." I'd argued against it, but she was my daughter, and she was hurting, so I'd agreed. Now sitting at my dinner table with my cracked ribs, screaming, I watched Brandon play the role of misunderstood victim. My younger brother Tom and his wife Linda sat stiffly, unsure how to react. Emily's cousin Mark kept glaring at Brandon. The tension was thick enough to cut. "So Marcus," Brandon said, his voice carrying that false joviality, "now that you've had time to think about it, realized it was all just a big misunderstanding, when are you going to drop those charges?" "I mean, we're family, right?" The table went silent. Everyone stared at me. He carefully set down my fork, the movement sending sharp pains through my ribs. He looked Brandon directly in the eye. "A misunderstanding? Is that what you're calling attempted murder now?" Dad, Emily started, but I held up a hand. "No, sweetheart, let me say this." I turned back to Brandon. "You saw it through the cottage stairs, planning for me to fall and break my neck. You cut the landline so he couldn't call for help. You forged my signature to change my life insurance beneficiary. And when none of that worked fast enough, you put your hands around my throat and tried to choke me to death." Brandon's mask slipped. "You can't prove. The RCMP has photos, documents, your fingerprints on the saw, and I have these." He carefully pulled up my shirt, revealing the massive purple and yellow bruising across my ribs and chest. 3 cracked ribs, severe contusions, ligature marks on my throat, all documented by the hospital the night you attacked me. He lowered my shirt and leaned forward, ignoring the pain. "You didn't teach me a lesson, Brandon. You didn't prove he was old and weak. And in your way, you proved something else entirely." "What's that?" he asked, his voice tight. "That you're a coward who tried to murder an unarmed 64-year-old man for insurance money, and you still failed." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily was crying quietly. Mark looked like he wanted to vault across the table and strangle Brandon himself. Tom just shook his head in disgust. Brandon stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "This is I don't have to sit here and take this abuse. Emily, we're leaving." "No," Emily said quietly. "What?" She looked up at him, her eyes red, but her voice steady. "No, Brandon, you're leaving alone. The divorce papers are being served tomorrow. My lawyer says, with the criminal charges, I'll get everything. The house, the car, all of it. You're going to prison, and when you get out, you'll have nothing. No wife, no family, no future. Emily, please get out of my father's house." Brandon looked around the table, seeking an ally, finding none. Finally, his mask cracked completely. "You're all going to regret this. I'll appeal. I'll fight. You'll go to prison," I said calmly. "The Crown prosecutor tells me you're looking at 10 to 15 years minimum. And in Canadian prisons, they don't look kindly on men who hurt the elderly. You'll have a lot of time to think about your choices." He stared at me with pure hatred, then stormed out. We heard his car start, Tide spinning on the icy driveway as he sped away. After a moment, Tom raised his glass. "To Marcus, tough as nails even after everything." "To Dad," Emily added, her voice breaking. "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." "Nothing to be sorry for, sweetheart. You loved the wrong man. That's not a crime, but you chose right in the end, and that's what matters." We finished dinner quietly, and afterward, everyone helped clean up. When they'd all gone home, Emily stayed behind. We sat by the fireplace, not speaking, just being together. "I really would have killed you," she finally said. "It wasn't a question." "Yes, and you kept yourself alive using everything you learned in all those years with the RCMP. "Yes, Mom would be proud." That made me smile despite the pain in my ribs. "Your mother would have shot him the moment he walked in the door. She never liked him much either." That got a small laugh from Emily, the first real one I'd heard from her in weeks. We sat there until the fire burned low, father and daughter, survivors both. Brendan's trial is set for March. The evidence is overwhelming, and his lawyer has already hinted at a plea deal. He'll testify if needed, though the prosecutor thinks it won't come to that. The physical evidence tells the story clearly enough. He sold the cottage. Too many bad memories now layered over the good ones with Margaret. The money went into a trust for Emily to help her rebuild her life. My ribs healed slowly. At my age, everything heals slower. But I'm still here, still breathing, still standing. Brandon tried to teach me a lesson about getting old, about being weak, about being in the way. Instead, he taught him one. Age isn't weakness, experience isn't irrelevant, and a desperate man with a plan is no match for a careful man with 36 years of catching criminals. That's the lesson Brandon learned in the end, and it's one he'll have plenty of time to remember while he's serving his sentence. As for me, I'm learning to live again. I've started volunteering at a community center teaching self-defense to seniors. Don't be a victim, I tell them. Stay aware, stay strong, and trust your instincts. If my experience can help even one person avoid a similar situation, then maybe something good came from that terrible weekend. Emily's doing better too. She's in therapy working through the betrayal and the guilt. She keeps apologizing, but I keep telling her the same thing. She didn't do this. Brandon did. She's a victim here too. Sometimes late at night, I think about those moments on the cottage floor. Brandon's hands around my throat, my vision fading to black. I think about how close he came to never seeing another sunrise, never holding a grandchild, never watching Emily heal and rebuild her life. And then I think about Margaret, and I imagine her voice in my head, that tough, practical tone she always used when I was overthinking things. "You survived, Marcus. Now stop dwelling and start living." So that's what I'm doing. Living one careful breath at a time with my cracked ribs, reminding me with each inhale that I'm still here, still fighting, still refusing to let anyone write my ending but me. Brandon thought he could get away with murder. Instead, he's getting 10 to 15 years in a federal prison, a criminal record that will follow him forever, and the knowledge that he tried to kill an old man and failed completely. That's justice. Canadian justice, slow, thorough, and absolutely certain. And for me, he got something more valuable than revenge. He got my life, my daughter, and the satisfaction of knowing that experience, training, and sheer stubborn refusal to give up can still win the day. Even when you're 64 with cracked ribs and a broken heart, you can still win. You just have to be smart about it. Stay calm under pressure, and never, ever underestimate what an old cop knows about catching criminals. Brandon learned that lesson the hard way, and he'll have 15 years to remember it. As for that toast he made at Christmas dinner about the old man learning his lesson, he was right about one thing. Someone learned a lesson that weekend at the cottage. It just wasn't me.